Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Target Transfers podcast, the number one heat printing podcast in the world. Today we're joined by Ellen and Alastair from Graphtec. How are you doing today, guys?
Yeah, I'm good. A little bit late in the day now. I'm starting to feel the burn after the drive here this morning.
Yeah. We've had a busy afternoon filming. There's been a lot going on, but we're finally sitting down to record a long overdue podcast, in our opinion. Do you want to tell the listeners, the viewers, a little bit about you guys, what you do, a bit more about Graphtec?
Yeah, so I'm Alastair. I do all the digital marketing, everything for Graphtec. My colleague, so next to me is Ellen. If you haven't met us before, you may have seen us. You guys, we have our own podcast as well.
You do. Cutting Matters. We watch it regularly. We're big fans.
Yeah, so sitting in this environment isn't too alien to us anymore.
That's good. Normally it's polar opposite for other people and they're like, oh, this feels weird.
Oh my God. It's like
it was like that for us the first time though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it took a while to get used to. But yeah, we are the UK distributor. So we're Graphtec GB. So we're the UK distributor for all of Graphtec's cutting equipment. So we come down today. It's part of the Vinyl Summit that we're in collaboration with you guys, and we supply all cutting systems for cutting. Well, from your guys' cases, heat transfer vinyl. Yeah. So we're here as part of the summit to run through all of the cutting equipment that you can use to cut the vinyls, and basically the whole life cycle of cutting to weeding out to then fuse onto fabrics. So the brief history of Graphtec, we've got, I think it's, when was it? The Graphtec GB as it is now is about, I think it's just over 30 years.
Yeah.
So there's always, with the Graphtec machines, there's always kind of like in this kind of environment, you're looking at roll-fed cutting plotters, aren't you? And we do two series of cutting plotters. There's always the FC series and always the CE series. The FC series is the top of the range model. Just got low. It's the top of the range, I say, in a way that it's for specialist materials. So like longer runs of paint protection films and things for doing cars and that type of things. But where the machinery that is this kind of the staple in this kind of industry is the CE range. Yeah. In particular, what we'll be focused on tomorrow in part of the Vinyl Summit is the CE7000.
Yeah.
Ellen will be doing all the dems tomorrow.
Yes, looking forward to tomorrow. We've been planning this for a while, haven't we? So it's finally the day tomorrow.
Exactly.
So we've got the Graphtec equipment. So as Graphtec, we're not just supplying Graphtec equipment, we also do the silhouette machines as well. So tomorrow we'll be talking about the differences between the machines and putting all different types of material through them. So your range of vinyls, we're looking at, different thicknesses and how they all work through our machines. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Graphtec GB. We are distributed for Graphtec, but as Ellen said, we are distributed for other brands such as Silhouette. We also do like the Brother Scan and Cut range. We've got like medias as well, and like similar to what you guys are doing. But yeah, we're a distribution company, but mainly focused on the hardware.
But essentially are, I think wouldn't be fair. It'd be fair to say you are sort of plotter cutter UK essentially. I mean, you've got the best cutting machines, and you the only other company that's doing things like podcasts and educating people to make sure, because there's obviously everyone. The great thing about Silhouettes, and we'll get into this, is that anyone can pick it up and start going. Yeah. But then as you start to get to the next levels, there's so much more you can unlock with these machines. And then kind of really sort of start to get those productivity hacks, how to best use the software, how to know which blades you shouldn't use when. There's so many different things and different facets to these machines that's why we're really excited to have you both on today, so we can kind of get into the whens and the whys.
Yeah, there's so many crossovers between the two kind of industries, isn't there?
Yeah.
So you can start off with the silhouette cutters. Depends on your business. If you're just starting off, the silhouette machines are great because they're desktop friendly.
Yeah.
So if you've not got a lot of space at home or in your garage or shed or wherever you're trying to start off your business, they will fit on a desk. Yeah. Connect to your laptop, connect to a Mac, doesn't matter. They'll bolt straight in. But also, it's something we touched on in our podcast before. It's something that we'll talk about tomorrow when we're doing the summit. how easy it is to scale your business and like scalability of everything that we do. You don't have to be a professional graphic designer and able to use the softwares that come with them. They're very intuitive to use. But if you're looking to start a business and want to take it from kind of just moonlighting in the week, just a bit of a side hustle, through to being your business, there is a way to do it very cost effectively. So if you've got experience in the past with something like Adobe Illustrator or something like that, you don't actually need to use the design softwares that come with the Silhouette machine or the Graphtec machine. But what's really good is basically if you start off on Illustrator and you buy the plugin to allow you to, you basically can operate the Silhouette machines and the Graphtec machines out of Illustrator. So that means all you do when you get to a point of wanting to like move from a Silhouette machine up to a Graphtec is all you're doing is unplugging your hardware device and plugging a new one in. So all your designs are saved on that, and that's the easiest way of doing it.
Okay, so let's take it back to the beginning, because one of the things I wanted to cover. So basically, the cutting machines, you can put any heat transfer vinyl under them, which is what we really want to talk about today. But the great thing is that no matter, so whoever's listening, because we've got people who are just starting to think about starting a business, they're not even, maybe never even heat pressed anything. They might have ironed something, but that's it. All the way through to established businesses that are looking to level up. So we're going to take it all the way through today. But the great thing is, if you've never used a Silhouette before, any cutting machine, is that just to get started off, I mean, I would say that if you can use an iPhone, you can use a Silhouette Studio, because it's so easy. So if you're thinking about starting a personalization business, or like where you might put people's names on things or initial stuff, or even just start thinking about your own brand, or you just want to do stuff in glitter or something a bit different, sort of specialty finishes. The great thing is that you can just pick up a Silhouette Studio. Like I say, it's a desktop thing, and these things they're not heavy. You get a sticky mat, which you can place your vinyl on. You can cut it down from a meter length and use as much or as little as you want to at the same time. And then you literally, I think the great thing is because you get software, which is free. So if anyone that's thinking about it, you could download that software for free today, play around with it, get as far as hitting cut, and then you could be like, okay, can I use this? You can make that an informed decision and be like, okay, I'm ready to do it. You get them next day, so you don't need to worry about that. But the thing I always found really useful is it's so intuitive, because you get a sticky mat, which you put your vinyl on, and you hit grid on your software, and you can literally see whatever's in front of you.
It's so user-friendly.
It's really, really user-friendly. So it's not something you need to be kind of like worried about or intimidated by, because it's been built for pretty much anyone to use it. If you can use any design app on your phone, anyone that's old enough to have used Paint or something like that, it's really that simple. It's drag and drop.
Paint still has its uses.
Because you can even do things like you can trace stuff in it. So you could draw something on a piece of paper and put it into the studio and just get it to trace it. So anything that's kind of in your brain you want to test around or play around with as a potential business, you can get started with it, can't you? So what sort of companies or people would you say kind of tend to start out with a Silhouette? Who is there kind of there's probably not such a thing as an atypical user, but what is some ways of using the Silhouette that you've seen?
It really varies, isn't it? Like, we have people that are doing personalization. That's a big one for using the Cameo machine, because like you say, with the software, it's more of a creative tool. So with the software, you can literally create anything, whether it's different types of text in there, different shapes, designs. So a lot of people for personalization use the Cameo to begin with. You'll find as well people that are starting out with their own businesses for going down the heat transfer route. They start off with a Cameo. A lot of people do. Again, they're doing like small text, like on a pencil case, or in a bag. So they start off with a Silhouette because it's more cost friendly, but also because sometimes technology can be quite daunting for some people. So going through the Silhouette route, it's much more easier to use for those that are not really, very technically minded or, are very good on the computer as well.
I think the great thing as well is with the Silhouette, you could get a Silhouette and you could perhaps pair it with something like a Clown Basic, and for less than £1,000, even including that, you've got a whole business. Everything you could need apart from some raw materials, but they're like £6 for a meter of vinyl anyway, and then a couple of t-shirts like £2 or £3. Just like that, you can start a whole business There's no, and you could do that in your bedroom.
You know how to use social media and also like Facebook Marketplace and things like that, just to start selling things on, and then moving. So easy to get an Etsy shop or a little Shopify account, and then you can literally have a bedroom business to make all these. You can have all your marketing department and your production department, everything within the space of like a desk. These days, it's incredible what you can do with all the equipment.
Yeah,
I think as well, especially now that you've got these 3 different sizes in the silhouette, it means that you can either start off small or even start off at a decent size. But it means that with it, if you even take this like a portrait or the Cameo 4 entry level, you probably have to sell like 50 t-shirts before you start to make a profit from that, make your money back on all of the press and the cutter together.
Well, I mean, if you've got a portrait, which is, and I have as an RRP of 180 quid, so that's your cutter sorted, and then you buy, even just pair it with like the Happy Press 2.1 for less than 500 quid. There, you've got a whole production outfit. Yeah, and you can just get going. It's so simple, and it's really cost effective these days. It's not going to have to get a business loan to get started to do this type of thing.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point. What you said about people not needing, it's really easy to sell online, to get a Etsy shop, or I think a lot of people get quite overwhelmed when they think about selling products online because they think, I need a website and then I have to figure out how it all works, and I'm not very good with tech. But it's so easy, even if you were just to, like you say, sell on Facebook Marketplace or in community groups. It doesn't even have to be a proper shop to start with, like we've discussed
to your friends and family.
Yeah, as we've discussed so many times before on previous episodes, it's like localization, word of mouth. Like you don't even necessarily need, it's beneficial, but you don't need a website at first. You can do all of it through, just your phone.
Yeah. It's a completely different market, but I've done something like nothing to do with work with Graphtec or anything like that, but done that for my brother for his business, startup business in the last 18 months of taking it from just starting it on social media through to now you've got a website and it's grown like that. But there's no reason why you can't take that route to do this type of thing. One thing that is kind of, it ties into scalability and also ties into it's like a situation where it can be, you say it can be quite overwhelming for people to think about, I've got to get all this ready. You're making t-shirts. You don't need to set up, I've got to make a t-shirt business. I need to have 10 smalls, 10 mediums, 10 larges. To start off, just do on demand.
Yeah, order them as you need them. Yeah,
just make them as you need them. With like the content we filmed today, it's so quick to be able to cut, weed out, and then fuse onto the t-shirts. You can do it within 5 minutes. Like you get an order through within 10 minutes. You could have
created a design.
It's probably in the post at that point. In all honesty, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't have to have it sat there and think, I've got to invest all this money into stock and we might not sell. It's scary. You can just do it on demand. Yeah,
and because you can, I mean, most wholesalers let you order one t-shirt as well. So even in the worst case scenario, it's just one t-shirt a week. That's enough to get started. It gets the ball rolling that way.
I mean, the big, you'll see big sports brands, they all started out somewhere, didn't they? We have found out as well that a couple of those big brands also started out with a silhouette machine.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
And then upgraded.
You can. I mean, he's put it on YouTube, so you can go back and watch I think it's on the HQ tour of Gymshark, isn't it? You can see.
You still
portrait. Yeah. He's got it. He's still
there you go, podcast exclusive.
They've got it in. He's got it in the main office still, so they can see, look at it, and be like, that's what we do. I think they still.
You should get in touch with them.
You should.
If you're listening.
No, that's amazing. I also didn't know that.
Yeah. I think it's still got pride of place there. Is it kind of like, look where we started.
This is where it started. Yeah.
Vacuum.
It's a really good idea though, because it's humbling, isn't it? You look at where they are now, store on Regent Street, all of those massive achievements, and they look back at the silhouette and to look back as to where they've come from. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Humble beginnings, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just shows the scalability of things that you can do from something so small and grow it into an enterprise like that, really, isn't it? It's gone past being just a big business.
I'm still convinced that they use HTV though, because a few of the pieces I have from there, it feels like our silicon. I'm a bit of a nerd now whenever I get clothes. I'm sure everyone that works in this industry eventually will do the same. But I walk into a place and you touch it and you feel it and you try and suss out what it is. And I'm convinced that it's silicon, and it's like the 200 thickness, not the one. It's like a bit thicker. I've analysed it fully.
We were talking about football shirts before, weren't we? I won't go into too much depth in that conversation.
Dodgy application.
Yeah.
Say no more.
If anyone's listening that's having trouble with football shirts at a professional level, then don't be a stranger, because we've already established that we can help you.
We can sort that out.
And all we needed was a Graphtec cutter and a Hotronics press. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so the I think that's it. The Silhouette Studio is so easy to use, but there's so many different options for it, because you can put some other stuff through it as well as just heat transfer. Obviously, we'd always recommend using it for heat transfer vinyl, but if you're thinking about styling a little, we see them pop up quite a lot in little shops like fashion boutiques, things like that, where they like to do a little bit of personalization. But the other great thing is that you could do the sign vinyl to go on your window and change that all the time as well. There's lots of different uses. So what are some of the other materials that you could put through a Silhouette cutter?
Silhouette actually have their own brand range of materials. So something which is quite different, they do like tattoo papers, which is a bit funky.
What's a tattoo paper?
So you print it out on your normal printer, and then you put it through the Silhouette machine to like contour cut it, and then you can like put it on your skin.
Oh, it's a literal tattoo.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
it's like,
cool.
you know, the pot noodles used to have like those little tattoos, and you apply a bit of water to it. It's literally that.
That's genius. I
Yeah,
want to
it's
try that.
Yeah, they've got all sorts like that, haven't they?
We should have done that for the vinyl summit tomorrow.
Oh, we should have.
Arm tattoos. Andy's really looking. He's looking at me like, you're so fired.
They do it in gold, so
I
much.
think I'll be wearing a hoodie tomorrow.
I haven't fused you a hoodie, Andy. I've fused you a t-shirt.
There's still time. But there's loads of different ranges. Like cardstock can go through it. There's different like scratch off foils that can go through the machine as well.
Well, the machine started off initially, they were really, really popular with just for papercraft and scrapbooking, and just through different people putting different materials through. So as Ellen said, Silhouette it's quite a good thing to talk about, really, this, because within Silhouette Studio, when you buy a Silhouette Cameo or you buy a Silhouette Portrait, you get what's called an auto blade with it. Now, the auto blade's fantastic if you're using the settings. So all the settings that are in Silhouette Studio, those settings are for Silhouette's own branded medias. So when you put say you've bought a piece of Silhouette media, let's say it's some Silhouette heat transfer vinyl in this case, and you've put it in, you've clicked to say, right, I'm cutting a heat transfer vinyl from Silhouette. The auto blade will click to the right settings, and you should get a great cut. But then let's say someone goes, all right, well, I want to then start buying heat transfer vinyl from like you guys.
Yeah.
And they've got the original auto blade, and then they click the heat transfer. They just says heat transfer smooth, whatever. And then they go to cut it, and then all of a sudden, it's not cutting through properly, because all the media settings that are in the Silhouette Studio are specifically for Silhouette's own media. So then you can either try and tweak the settings to like tweak what the auto blade's doing. But one of the great things about the auto blade is that it works with Silhouette. But the downside is that they're a little bit regimented in how you can adapt the blade length. So whereas the Graphtec machines, you've basically got infinite adjustment manually with the blades between 0 and 1 mil. That's the same with the auto blades, but when it sets the depth on them, it's incremented to 0.1 mil at a time. So say you've got something that needs a depth setting, you've put it onto 0.1 mil, not enough. You put it onto 0.2 mil, it's too much. You think, oh, what do we do? At that point, then Silhouette also make ratchet blades, manual ratchet blades, like the Graphtecs, which have infinite adjustment between 0 mil and 1 mil. So when you're cutting third-party medias, we always say to go for like the 1 mil ratchet blades, because you've got that infinite amount of adjustment.
Yeah.
And once you've got those settings, you just put the blade in and away you go. It's far better that way.
It's probably worth noting, though, that the Silhouette settings for vinyl aren't far off what we use for ours, because I've used heat transfer smooth, heat transfer glitter. I think there's a flocked version on there as well. And all three of them have cut our Stahls vinyl perfectly fine first time. So they're not far off.
No, they're a good basis to set. So if you're not sure, so if you put a third party vinyl into a machine and you set that, you kind of got a benchmark of a setting to work to, and then it might take a couple of tweaks.
Oh yeah, they're all different. Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to sort of a common theme that comes up for us quite a lot is trying to break stuff. And I think the Silhouette machine is a great machine to try and break stuff with, because that's the most important. As soon as you get a Silhouette machine, the first thing to do is like, okay, is to try and find the limits on this machine. Because there always be a point at which vinyl gets too smaller, the lines get too thin, and then it's not going to look good, but it's not going to be very easy to cut and weed and fuse at that point. But the great thing is you can't actually break the machine by doing that, but you can start to find the limits of what it can design. I always say to people, well, when you first get it, it's like try and do like an alphabet sheet and go smaller and smaller in the sort of the font size.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
It's not just a case of at what point does the vinyl not quite get happy, but it's also like, if you're going to do this at volume, what point do you want to stop weeding it? You only want to weed it at a certain way. You don't want to spend all your time weeding. You want it to be a nice, easy, smooth peel away.
Yeah.
So that's be like, if anyone's thinking about getting a Silhouettes, get it, because they're easy to get hold of. They're not expensive. They're very versatile. And then just try and like break it. Try and, okay, what happens if I do this design? What happens if I put this vinyl on top of that vinyl? Will it still look good?
Yeah.
There's so many different things you can get away with trying to do with heat transfer vinyl, just with heat transfer vinyl with the Silhouette. Glitter, flock. It's just so many different options with it, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, well, we spoke about this half an hour ago or so before we started filming the podcast, but it's a conversation we've had, but they can get pigeonholed to be a craft cutter.
Yeah.
Whereas they're not. They are a multifunctional craft cutter where you can cut a plethora of different medias with them. You get samples all the time from people, don't you?
Yeah, loads of different types of material, things that you wouldn't necessarily think of. They can put through the machine, so it does vary massively. We're
talking about heat transfer vinyl and adhesive vinyl in this conversation, but you can use it to cut leather.
Yeah.
Or leatherette. There's rotary blades to cut different types of fabric and things, isn't there? So
yeah, with the Cameo 4. Yeah.
You can even put a pen attachment in as well, which I think would be, if you're first starting out and you want to leave a personalised message, but you've got terrible handwriting like me, you could put a personalised note in there that looked really nice.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to worry about. It'd take me half an hour to write one of those out. It looked nice, but that would take 2 minutes on a Silhouette Cameo.
I didn't know I could do that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pen adapters. So you can they've got sketch pens, haven't they?
Yeah, so they've got their own sketch pens, but you can also put normal gel pens or any type of marker in there with the Cameo 4 pen adapter. So you're not just stuck using the Silhouette colours. You can branch out to different types of pens.
It's a bit of history, how this links through. Graphtec and Silhouette are very, very closely related. They're owned by the same company in the grand scheme of things. But the technology of cutting and plotting was Graphtec developed it.
Yeah.
But the machines were originally developed as pen plotters. So they weren't originally developed to cut.
Okay.
They were developed to draw.
Yeah.
I think they developed the technology just after the Second World War. And I think a lot of it at the time was used in architects' offices and things to draw the blueprints for building sites and stuff like that. So and it was also for data graphs and stuff, because there's another arm of Graphtec which does instrumentation and data logging. So little computers that you can basically plug into a power station, it'll tell you everything.
Yeah.
But if you say you've got a chart power output for plotting onto papers, that's where the technology kind of all goes back to. And then one day someone thought, I wonder if we can cut something. So they put a knife in, and then now...
It seems so silly to not have it, doesn't it? You say that and you go, well, why didn't they do that in the first place? But I suppose if that's never been a thing before, you wouldn't think to do it, would you?
So, somebody decides to put a knife in, see if they cut the thing, and then all of a sudden, roll on 75, 80 years later, and 99% of what they're used for is for cutting now, not drawing.
I wonder how that first test cut went. I'd love to know. Absolutely terribly, I bet. Fly on the wall.
They cut someone's finger off.
I'd love to see some pictures of the old, the original ones to see what they look like.
I'm glad the blades are this big now. A lot more safe.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Target Transfers podcast. And just a quick reminder to don't forget to that subscribe button, turn those notifications on. Okay, now back to the podcast. So the Silhouette Cameo is a great way for people to get started. And the thing is it's a bit like heat presses. Depending on what your business style is, you can just keep adding and adding and adding. I've seen some videos online where one personalization company actually, rather than go for the big machine, this one actually had I think it was 11 or 12 cameos just lined up, because they were just doing initials onto Santa sacks, or just something personalized, just putting someone's name with my first or first birthday or something like that. But if someone was thinking about getting onto a bigger cutter, because obviously, you can put the a 500 mil wide piece of vinyl into the silhouette. Now you've got the pro version, but once you start to get into like long runs, you might be where you want to I just want to let my vinyl machine cut for meters at a time, because you could put 25 meters through the Graphtec machine, which we're going to talk about now. Can you tell us a little bit more about the CE7000 and the Graphtec range of cutters?
The CE7000 is built for volume work compared to a Cameo. So the Cameo is more for the startup businesses, but like you say, there's companies out there that are using, more than 10 machines running off different things. For the differences between a Silhouette and a Graphtec is the Graphtec is built more versatile, so it's much quicker. The blades are much more durable as well, and in terms of for a customer who's like looking to upgrade, they've got a lot of work going out, the Graphtec machines can actually hold that weighted material, whereas a Silhouette machine would be able to hold it, but it would struggle at certain lengths to try and pull that material through to perform the job. So yeah, it comes down to purchasing the vinyls as well.
Because it's a lot cheaper to buy vinyl by the meter. So if you start off, you probably buy a bit here, a bit there, but then obviously once you start to get into it, you realize, okay, actually black and white vinyl always sell more, so I'm going to need to stock up on that. I'm probably going to have more orders that are going to be based on those colors. But I think it also starts to come down to also like things like the little productivity hacks. So this is something that we get asked a lot when it comes to heat presses. Okay, what can I do? It's quicker and faster. And we did a little experiment about a month or two ago with a quick slip for a heat press. We're like, actually, we managed to save 15 seconds every time we fuse something. So it was like, I think it was about 41 seconds. Standard
roughly.
fuse time for pre-press, main press, setting it up. We brought it down to 25 seconds. So we worked, okay, 15 seconds, what does that actually mean? Well, actually, we worked out if you're doing 100 T-shirts a day, it's 11 days a year you get back. If you're doing 500, it's 55 working days. And that's kind of where I think the Graphtec comes in for me, and I think for a lot of people listening, is actually because, like you say, the Silhouette is not, there's no quality issue between the two. They're both fantastic machines. And if you're just doing like initials here and there, you don't need a Graphtec. But if you actually start to get to a point where actually every single second matters, because it's got that faster engine on it. And actually, if I could save 2 seconds or 10 seconds every time I cut something, that could be another 10 days a year that I could get back. It's really quite a big difference. And at that point, you're actually, well, that will pay for itself after like 6 months.
Yeah, I think like before when you said you'd seen people had opted to go for banks of Cameos, and we see for like on Instagram and social media, we see reels and things of people using, like they've got like a whole wall of Cameos that are just working constantly. But on the flip side, I've also seen footage of people who've got 17, 18 CE7000s in a row. But where I think that comes down to, I think if you've started out kind of using a Cameo and you've started out and you've done everything in Silhouette and got used to how easy the Silhouette Studio software is, that's when people have gone, oh, I'll buy another one. And you have to, in order to do that, though, you have to upgrade the Silhouette Studio software to Business Edition to allow you to run multiple cutters out of it. So that there is like a £90 upgrade fee to do that.
Is that a one-off fee?
It is a one-off fee. Yeah.
I think that's doable. If you're upgrading to have more than one cutter, that's kind of, you factor that in, don't you?
Yeah. And I think that when you see people using banks of machines like that, it's probably because they're just happy with using the Silhouette software and the output. But then when you want to do more volume work, and you go, oh, I've got all these designs saved in Silhouette Studio. Now, if you were to buy Silhouette, the Business Edition for Silhouette Studio, it does allow you to export your designs as EPS files, which then means you can download them into Graphtec Studio.
Yeah.
So you can then have the designs that you created and use them with the Graphtec Studio software. Or if you've got at that point, you've gone and into the realms of using Adobe Illustrator, you can import them straight into there. But right back to the start of this conversation when I was talking about scalability, you start off on something like Illustrator, it gives you that opportunity to go, well, I'll start off with a Silhouette because that's the most cost-effective route to get a machine.
Yep.
And then all your files are just Illustrator files, and then you just change your output device.
Yeah, because if you can use Illustrator, there's no way you can't use Silhouette Studio or Graphtec Studio. It's It's just not going to happen that way.
No, it is easy, isn't it? I think that's a good point. What you said about it depends on what you're doing, like your work. So if you are doing volume, then obviously, yeah, the Graphtec's better. But if you're doing personalization, the Silhouette's better. But I suppose people can have a combination of both. They could have 2 or 3 cameos, and then they could have a couple of plotter, like Graphtec plotter cutters, because depending on what you're doing, you might be doing, I don't know, say football tops or school things, or if you need bulk of a logo, but then the names as initials, you need both machines, because it would take you longer to run off personalization on a Graphtec, but then in order to run off bulk of the designs, you need the plotter.
Yeah, I think it depends on your sort of your workflow really. I know with the example I said before about having 12 of them, I think that they're very much on a kind of like one-to-one order basis. So one person would get an order, hit send to the cutter, pick it up, weed it, fuse it, and put it in a bag and send it out.
Oh, that's a good point.
But if you have perhaps a designated person who's doing all the cutting for you, then it makes much more sense. Just like, here's all the jobs that need to be cut today, and they can just, okay, I'm going to put everything together, make the best use of my vinyl, cut all at once, do all the weeding at once, and then that flows through your business in a much more efficient way by having the larger cutter at that point, I think.
Yeah. The way we're kind of split here is obviously we're doing digital marketing for Graphtec. It's my kind of job to obviously get everyone aware of the products.
Yeah.
And then Ellen looks after all the sales. So either end user sales or working with you guys like our resellers. So Ellen, you get a lot more hands-on with kind of end users and things and what they're doing, don't you, with the machines?
Yeah, I do speak to customers like on a day-to-day basis, really, and finding out what they've been up to with their machines. And again, that's what I bring to the table, don't I? I spoke to a customer and they wanted to do this. Even I never thought about doing that as well. So yeah, we're always learning as well from customers that bring new materials to us.
Yeah.
So,
what sort of common questions? I mean, this is a good chance to kind of, I guess, address things that you see people doing wrong, or common questions that people phone you up or send you a message on social media. What sort of the common questions for? Let's start off with people who are thinking about getting started. What is the number one questions that people would ask you that people who are listening might be thinking of at the moment?
You always want to look long term. You don't want to just do it for the now. You always want to like progress. So if you're going to go for a smaller machine, but no, down the line it's going to kick off, you're going to have to then upgrade your machine. So going for the right width machine, for the future, is definitely something really important as well. And also the full processor, you want to make sure you got the correct heat press as well, and the correct material that you're putting through the machine. That's one of the main things that we get asked, don't we, along that side of things. And also making sure you've got the right blades as well. So the machines come with an auto detect blade. That's for your standard thin vinyl. You want to make sure you've got a backup blade as well, just in case, when you're setting up the machine, sometimes it can be set up incorrectly, just because trial and error and the blade
especially
goes.
when you're making mistakes at the beginning.
Yeah, it's all learning curve, but we're there to support. You guys are there to support anyone who's looking to purchase a machine. So yeah, always make sure you've got a backup blade, whether it's an auto blade or, like I mentioned before, your ratchet blade, where you can actually set the blade up already. Because one thing about the auto blade is when you put it into the machine, you send a job through, it taps each time to get the right blade depth, and does that no matter if it's still the same blade that you used in your last job. It taps each time. When it's tapping, it's like wearing out the blade, whereas if you've got your own ratchet blade, it stays as that blade. So that's another little tip really to bear in mind.
I think as well as if you're starting out doing personalization, is that you're going to get a lot of like last minute jobs, especially when you first start out. Be like, can you do this for me? And they're like, oh, yeah, when do you need it by? Like an hour.
Yeah.
And so having that spare blade, it means you can be prepared for no matter who knocks on your door, who sends you an email, you can still be like, yeah, I got you covered. I can handle that work for you.
Yeah, I think now one of the big things to go to really is the fact that now Silhouette have the Cameo 4 Pro, which is the 24-inch wide machine. If you're looking to start out, yes, they do the 12-inch model, which is cheaper, but at the end of the day, everything comes down to cost effectiveness. And yes, the outlay for the Pro might be a bit more expensive than the 12-inch one, but if you think long-term about the media that you're going to be putting through, commercial size rolls of media are a lot more cost effective.
Yeah.
Than 12-inch rolls. So the 12-inch rolls of vinyl that you buy, they're geared towards people who are just doing one-off jobs, say craft, it falls into like the craft, but just like little bespoke jobs and things like that. And they're not really, those rolls of vinyl aren't geared price wise to allow you to really make a decent margin on what you're doing.
Yes.
So if you go and buy the Pro, you can then buy the commercial size rolls of vinyl, which are priced at a price point where you can put it through, and it gives you then margin to start making more money off your media and obviously your creations and things like that.
Yeah, it's always definitely much easier to buy it by the meter. And I think for those that are listening, who've listened for a little while now, you know, we talk about, when we talk about transfers, we talk about gang sheets. Ganging as much work as you can together. And I think the Silhouette Pro is kind of like the equivalent of that for vinyl.
Yeah.
Because you can put that whole meter on there. You can get, if you say you're just doing like left chest, you could probably do 70 to 80 of those on one piece of vinyl in one go on a Cameo. So it means you can get that kind of, you know, take a piece of, an entry level piece of vinyl is like £5.50, and you divide that by 70. So even from your very first meter, you're getting a really keen profit point or a keen price on all of your transfers.
Yeah, when you look at like 12-inch rolls of vinyl, which say are geared up to more kind of like one-off little jobs, and people just stock up a little bit every now and again, you're looking at some rolls of that vinyl over, like some of them are up to £15. Well, you're not really going to make any money back on what you're selling if you're spending that amount of money on a 12-inch roll of vinyl. So if you buy the wider Pro model, you can use these wider rolls. But what I would say is kind of like, I'm going to say pro tip.
Here we go. Exclusive.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people who don't realize that you don't need to use the cut. So when you buy a machine, you get a cutting mat, like a self-release cutting mat. You don't need to use those cutting mats to cut HTV or adhesive vinyls, because you're already cutting the top layer.
Yeah.
And as soon as you set your machine up to tell it that it's cutting a vinyl, it won't, unless you're using a ratchet blade and you've set the length far too far out, where you set it to a mil, it won't cut through.
Yeah.
And you don't need, and that's, like you said about getting time back and speeding processes up. Well, if you realize that you don't need to stick your vinyl to a carry sheet and then load the carry sheet, you can put it in. And the only time you need to use the carry sheet is if you're trying to make the most of any scraps of material that you've got.
Yeah.
And if that scrap of material is too narrow to fit in between the rolls to be held in, then yes, stick it to your carry sheet and feed it in so it can hold it in place. But yeah, you don't need to use the carry sheets to kiss cut.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, there you go. It's a pro trip for everyone.
And
everyone, when they unbox their Silhouette in a couple of days' time, they'll know exactly how to get started.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay. And so what about versus, someone's upgraded to a CE7000. What is a kind of, you touched on the different blade types earlier, but what kind of common questions do people get asked? So thinking about someone who's listening, they've already got a Cameo in some model and think, okay, I'm ready. I need to make this time savings. But what is a common question that someone might ask you about buying their first CE7000?
Most questions I get asked, it does come down to size, but with the Silhouette, you've got the Pro, which matches the same size as a CE7060.
Yeah.
Speed is a huge factor. So if you are looking for something quite speedy and something that you can just load and go away, do something else, and then come back to it, the machine is reliable enough to do that. You can cut out thicker materials at a quicker speed as well. So the likes of the high build that we tested out earlier today, that works wonders in the CE machine. You would probably struggle with a Cameo. You'd have to do it a couple passes to be able to get through. And again, that's time that you're using up to try and cut through one piece of material.
We use more specialist vinyls. That's when the Graphtec comes into it.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And obviously, like you say, that volume is a big one. So, we sell, the biggest vinyl roll that we sell is 25 meters, and we know that you could comfortably just set that whole thing going. If you really needed to do 25 meters in one go, that's it. You don't have to sit and watch it, which I think is a great thing. It's so reliable that you can trust it.
No, well, with the Graphtec, with the CE7000, you can put longer rolls in. It is worth noting that repeatability and accuracy of job on the 7000 model is 2 meters in terms of guaranteed tracking accuracy over that distance. So you can fit the longer rolls in, but You can increase the length of job with the CE7060 if you choose to upgrade it with the media baskets, which gives you another 5, because what that does is when you've got the media basket on the front, it encourages the roll to curl.
Yes.
And when it does that, it still keeps that tension over. So yes, you can fit the longer rolls on, but I would always suggest that kind of keep to the tracking capabilities of the machine as it is. So with like the kind of conversation between a Cameo Pro, I wouldn't ever go anything more than like a meter on the Pro.
Yeah.
And then if you want to start doing the longer run stuff at a quicker tempo or more specialist material like the high build we were talking about, then that's when you want to start looking at moving up to a Graphtec. Yeah,
and I mean, how many people would you say just buy the Graphtec just because it's so quiet as well?
Yeah, there's that element as well. Yeah.
Cut next to we had a Silhouette and a Graphtec going today, and the sound difference, I really thought that the Graphtec was going to be the louder one, just because it's so much bigger, but it was
much more powerful,
dead silent. Yeah,
it's the motors
amazing.
that are used. I'd say a friend of mine, he's looking to buy a cutter at the moment, and he's like me, got young children, and he's looking to have the cutter at home.
Yeah.
But using it at night. And I was like, do yourself a favour and just buy the Graphtec one, because the Silhouettes are great, but they are a little bit noisy. So I'd say if you're in that situation, probably buy the Graphtec because it is pretty much silent. We won't wake the kids up upstairs.
You lose 3 hours of productivity a night from putting them back to bed.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And I should also add, if anyone that's listening and wants to see what the Graphtec cutter looks like in action, we have recorded loads of video for you today. So you'll be able to go onto our YouTube channel, have a look on the Graphtec playlist, and go onto different product pages. Anything you're thinking of doing, we should hopefully have an answer for you. So you can see it for yourself, and you can see just how easy it is to do it. Literally like 30 seconds most times, just to cut a simple, pretty decent chunky design out. Nice and easy to weed. So it's really, really very straightforward for anyone that's thinking about getting a cutting machine, especially if you want to do things like, I think we've got over 60 colors of glitter now.
Wow.
So there's so many different specialty finishes that you can do now. We've got like hologram stuff, sparkly stuff. We've got 2 different metallic types of materials. So if you want to do distressed metallic looks, it's kind of anything that you can that's in your brain that you would like to be able to put onto a t-shirt or hoodie or a bag or any kind of textile. There's a solution, because you can get the detail cut from the cutting machine, but you can easily fuse that type of material as well. So it's really kind of like a no limits solution to have a Graphtec cutter, Hotronics pressed together, kind of like the world's your oyster, really, I would say.
Yeah, like Ellen said before about having spare blades and things like that, and like you mentioned in glitter, different types of vinyls they eat through blades quicker than others. So glitter vinyl will really wear your blade down a lot quicker than just when you kiss cutting smooth vinyl and things like that. So it's almost worth sometimes having separate blades for separate jobs and marking them up for what you're using them for. But in terms of like your consumables between a Graphtec and a Silhouette, when you replace a Silhouette blade, you replace the whole thing, so the body, the blade holder, and the blade. Whereas a Graphtec, when you replace the blade, but in terms of pricing, they're not too different, really. So
not really, no.
No, obviously the machinery is more expensive to start with, but consumable wise, it's not much different.
No, I would echo that point. If anyone wants to see the live prices on targettransfers.com, just search for Graphtec blade or Silhouette blade, but they are not. It's not like you're really not going to spend a lot of money. It's compared to what you would put any other consumable you might have in your business, it's probably less than the majority of them, I would say.
Yeah, and there's not a lot that you really need to change on a plotter, is there?
No, with the blade, not really it.
The cutting strip.
The cutting strip, if you ever cut right through, which if you've got the machine set up correctly anyway, you would never really need to change that.
Yeah, and I think that's another important thing is that, of course, we've got an event tomorrow. You'll be listening to us after that point, but everything we do for heat pressing is recipe based, but it's pretty much the same for Graphtec. Ellen was setting up the machine to have a recipe set for tomorrow for the event to make sure that there's no mistakes. And I think he says 8 presets you can have.
Yeah, 8.
And in all honesty, I can't see that you probably need more than 8 different types of heat transfer vinyl. Depending on your business, you're probably going to focus down on 4 or 5 different times. So like I said, you could have the specific blade that matches that number recipe on your cutting machine, so that we can pick that and that, and it's like pretty seamless in terms of your production. So no matter what jobs come through, you can be like, that blade, that order, I know what the cut settings are going to be, and that way you can follow a process every single time.
Yeah, so the machines naturally come with. There's 2 different blade sizes for Graphtec machines. There's the machines come with a 0.9mm blade, which is the black and blue holder.
Yep.
But your high build heat transfer, that requires the 1.5mm blade. Now, they don't come as standard with the machine. We do offer a package that, say, if you were buying that Graphtec to only cut high build, then we could swap the blade out for what we refer to as a mason's kit, because it's also the same blade that is used to cut like sandblast rubbers and things like that. But we can swap that out and things. But if you're using it for like the broad range of vinyls, yes, it's better to have all the tools there, so you can just quickly change between before thinking, I'll buy the high build, and then all of a sudden you think, my blade's not going to cut. It's having that kind of information with it.
And I would say, even if you're thinking about, even if high build is the one for you and that's the one you're looking to build your business on the back of, I would say is to get something like a Sports MX or a Premium Plus anyway, because I think by practicing on that thinner vinyl, it helps kind of put in that kind of base of education, so that way you kind of got some sort of learnings to start from the beginning with vinyl, so that way you can build upon, and in that way, by the time now I'm ready to do some high build, you'll understand where the limits are, how to kind of work with the vinyl, how to weed it, what design's going to look good. It's a good sort of base to have as well.
Yeah. I think one thing we haven't touched on, which is important for us as a company with Graphtec, like we are the distributor for the Graphtec machines, the Silhouette machines. So we work with you guys because you're one of our resellers for the equipment. But what's really important for any end users who are looking to buy the machines, we look after the warranty and all the support. So if you ever had any issue with your machines whilst you're in the middle of a massive order and you need help, and all of a sudden something's gone wrong, you've also got that fallback of help. If it's something that you guys can't answer, then you can just get straight back onto us. And we've got a technical team there who's more than happy to help, and will probably know the answer because they're like the oracles over there. Some of the guys have been working with machines for decades.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you on today, and one of the reasons we have worked together as partners for so long is because the reliability of the Graphtec and Silhouette is something that matches Hotronics. I mean, and we use Graphtecs in all continents for Stahls and Hotronics when we're doing heat transfer vinyl demos, because we know they're reliable, they last, and it is something that people can build a business off the back of.
Yeah. As one of those things that you fall back on is there are cheaper plotted commercial width cutting systems, but at the end of the day, you can fall into a trap of buy cheap, buy twice.
Yeah.
And yes, they are more expensive than some on the market, but they will not give you a problem. And if they do give you a problem, then you've got that support to fall back on in the UK with what we can offer you, and what you guys can support with as well.
Yeah, I think as well. I think that software support as well is big to me. That the ease of use of actually just I'd imagine that once someone's used that software a few times, it's very rare they actually have to contact you about that, because it's so straightforward. It's drag and drop stuff really, and even if you just wanted to start using the fonts in there, it's really, really easy to get going with that as well. Yeah,
there's lots of videos as well on YouTube and stuff that we've got there, like manuals and stuff, if anybody was unsure on how to use it from the get-go. So there's always that support. I mean, using something for the first time is always going to be a bit hit and miss, but as soon as you get into the swing of things, it's really easy to pick up.
Okay, so one of the questions we like to ask our guests quite a lot is, and it's normally when our own customers are coming, is we like to know what the weirdest thing that they've ever had to cut or fuse for a customer. But have you got any kind of weird and wonderful stories about
Ellen's laughing.
What's the strangest thing you've come across a customer using a Silhouette or Graphtec machine to design and run their business?
I don't think it's anything like crazy or silly, but fabric. It's not something that I would ever thought could be put through the machine, but we had someone who was creating them flower bouquets.
Okay.
That's the right word, isn't it? and we made them all out of fabric. And I thought at first, you're not going to get much luck with that. But with the cutting mat, applied the material onto the cut mat and put it into the machine, and it worked absolutely fine. And then that was another thing where I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, this demo, but it went really well. It's not so much like weird, but it was something interesting, which
it's different. Yeah.
We did have a bit of a funny scenario I'm not sure, it might have been before you started, because I ended up with this. I still have it now. I use it as a cheese board. But obviously, I was saying before, we have the mason's blades to cut sandblast rubber.
Yeah.
And somebody got in contact quite a while ago, and they said, "Oh, we need a sample of." We hadn't heard of the brand of sandblast rubber they were using before, so we're like, "Oh, right, send us a sample, and we'll work out what settings you need." So 2 weeks later, really, really heavy box turns up, and it's like marked as samples, and we're like, "What the heck is this?" So we opened the box. 2 massive pieces of finished slate were in this box, and we worked out this guy thought we could cut the slate slabs on the knife cutter. So I think there was a bit of cross wires, but that's probably the strangest one I've had come in terms of, can you cut this?
I mean, did you try it? Did you put it under to see it score?
No, we kept them for as cheese boards. You didn't ruin them, Ellen.
I didn't ruin it. Do you know
Took
how much
them
it
home.
costs? No, I used it as a cheese board. And I think one of them ended up being a sign on someone's house.
Okay.
Yeah, someone put vinyl on the front of it. This is before we did the laser cutters.
Yeah,
So
I was
now,
gonna say,
because
that's
we
for a
have
laser machine.
like another part of our business, we've got the laser cutters. We could actually engrave like the number and the nameplate onto that now. But back then there was no chance of running it through a CE7000 over there. The knife wouldn't last 5 seconds.
You couldn't even
just
like put it
shatter.
into the machine though either,
No,
because it's not
it was
got.
quite funny.
I can't. I'm amazed I want to know how he thought that's what you did as a company.
Yeah.
Like I can kind of understand how we got confused, but slate versus vinyl's a bit different.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, to be fair now, but it did tickle me when they turned up. But I ended up with my sheet board.
I suppose you could put something that's done as MDF through and actually make some custom carved cheese boards with that, can you?
You can do the MDF, well, you can, so not MDF really, you can use
Balsa wood and a cameo
in the
machine.
cameo,
Yeah.
with some specific tools, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there we go. You could have a cheese board and t-shirt business.
Exactly.
There
Yeah.
we go. Okay, well, I think that kind of wraps it up for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We can have lots of great videos off the back of this. So if anyone wants to see some tips and tricks of how to use the Graphtec CE7000, we've got some great talks lined up for the Vinyl Summit. And I'd also like to just say thank you again. Make sure you check out the Cutting Matters podcast. There's lots of great cutting content on there, kind of like the nerdy detail. Some great, but that's what
We all love the nerdy detail.
Everyone loves nerdy detail. People who want to hear some examples of other people that are being successful with the Graphtec and the silhouette cutting machines. It's very possible to do that. So I'd encourage everyone to go and subscribe to your podcast as well. I think that's it for me.
Yeah, no, I have nothing else to add other than don't forget to subscribe to the Target Transfers podcast, and we will see you next Thursday with another episode.